Welcome to the second session of our professional development program looking at leadership. This session is underpinned by solution-focused approaches. Solution-focused leadership is a paradigm based on exploring and maximizing strengths and making a positive impact, rather than focusing on the problem. It does not mean that we ignore problems, avoid criticism, or propagate toxic positivity. Rather, a solution-focused approach helps us to direct the energy of colleagues towards a solution and empowers the team to work together to bring about an outcome, as opposed to the time and energy being wasted in a cycle of negativity that serves no constructive purpose. This approach provides us with practical measures that we can all implement regardless of our current position. In other words, you don't need the title to be part of a solution. A recurring point for consideration, and something that was touched upon in the previous session, is the question, what are your motivations to lead? And also, what does that actually mean to you to lead? Are you driven by a mission that is embedded in educational outcomes? Are you looking for some status or a sense of fulfillment, perhaps being driven by the ego? Or is it about a sense of accomplishment and contributing to something greater? Perhaps you want to be the one making decisions and driving forward change in a direction that you believe to be right. Or more likely, it's a mixture of some of these, or perhaps something else entirely. But regardless, your answer to those questions does matter. It matters in terms of the type of leader that you will go on to be, your credibility, your authenticity, and perhaps most importantly, your impact. You need to reflect on your motivations and be clear on them. You can feel free to share them in the chat or hold on to them for now, but you must be authentic and honest either way, regardless of how uncomfortable that may be. In their publication, Goffey and Jones, they outlined some key traits of successful leaders. They found that, unexpectedly, leaders need vision, energy, authority, and a strategic direction. Interestingly, though, they go on to say that some things were less expected. They note, for example, that organizations often structure themselves in a way that kills leadership by promoting those who overestimate their ability to lead or are ambitious for disingenuous reasons. There are a vast array of theories on leadership. Theories mean very little if we can't apply them in a context. So it's not enough to simply know them. It's about what that looks and sounds like in practice in the day-to-day life of a school. And so another opportunity for a point of reflection. When completing the survey at the start of this course, what did you use in order to make a judgment about your abilities? What criteria were you applying? And again, the research directs us back to your why. I won't ask you to share your responses to these prompts in the chat, but I would stress the value in you taking some time to revisit, to dig a little bit deeper, and to really get honest with yourself. A solution-focused approach helps to demonstrate that as a leader you can walk the walk, that you can lead by example, and helps you to understand what needs to be done and also why. You can't lead if you don't have an awareness of the bigger picture. That includes the constraints that you're operating within and an understanding of what and where the challenges are. So, quite simply, you can't work to solve a problem if you don't take the time to first understand it. So, how present are you and how mindful are you in your day-to-day interactions in your current role? Are you watching and listening and paying attention? Would you say that you know and understand your context? So, on that note, think about the last time you identified a problem or a challenge at a place of work or something that you felt could be improved. How did you deal with it? Did you step back to pause and think about the bigger picture? Take the time to understand why something was being done a certain way? Did you think about your limitations in terms of what you didn't know and what questions you should be asking to address that? You don't need to wait for the title, remember, in your current position before you can start making a difference and driving forward change. Sure, there's all been times where we've noticed or been aware of a colleague perhaps not following protocols. Times when we have perhaps stayed silent, when we've heard toxic gossip or unconstructive criticism, and maybe felt that it wasn't our job to address it. But when moving forward into leadership, you would then need to think about what those actions, or rather inactions, say about you and your ability to step into that role of leadership. I invite you now to look over the 4 points that have been shared on this slide. I would like you then to focus on one, to take some time to think about what that actually means, what it would look like in practice, and how you would actually go about doing it. Perhaps there's a time when you've already demonstrated your capacity to deliver in one of these areas. So we will pause here, unmute, and take some time for discussion. According to Leithwood, school leadership is second only to classroom teaching as an influence on pupil learning. And the central task for leadership is to help improve employee performance. If as leaders we truly believe that teaching and learning are the most important activities in a school, we must show it through our behaviour and not just words. Every aspect of school life must be conducted in a way that is consistent with that belief. So Leithwood goes on to say that if the most important thing a leader can do is create and manage culture, and if performance management and lesson observations are an important way of doing this, and if becoming a learning institution and an institution of learning represents an appropriate goal for an effective school, and if intellectual honesty and authenticity and consonance are key virtues in the running of a school, then all of these should be visible in the day-to-day life of an effective school. So prior to the session today, you had access to 3 fictional pieces of feedback based on some lesson observations. The purpose of this exercise is to provoke discussion around some of the practical elements in making a positive and measurable impact on learning and teaching, using lesson observations as a medium for doing so. So again, let's pause here, we'll unmute, And be mindful to keep our discussion not just on what we would do, but how we would go about doing it. So, theory and practice. Each of the 3 points developed on the screen can be achieved without a title or an official leadership position. So, if you're waiting for that before you take action, perhaps you need to go back to consider your why. I invite you here to reflect on your daily practices, how you conduct yourself in your current role, how you interact with others, when you stay silent, when you choose to speak up, and so on. Are you already making a positive difference to learning and teaching? Whether that just be your daily practice in the classroom, in working with colleagues in your department or subject area, or across a section in the school. And how do you know? Have you set your own measurable outcomes? Have you set your own professional learning goals? How are you being proactive in building capacity? Or are you simply at this point coasting along, waiting for something, the right conditions or the right title before you do it? So we'll take another point leading on from that to reflect and share. I invite you to think of a time where a colleague has acted in a way that could be considered unprofessional and detrimental to the school community and culture. I want you to draw upon all your experiences to date, not just limit that to your current context. We'll pause and discuss what you did or didn't do, what the challenges can be in these situations, how having a title might have influenced the way that you behaved, where you did take action, what was the outcome, and perhaps most importantly, what did you learn, either from the inaction or the action that you took. And now let's flip our focus to a time where you've identified a problem, an issue, or a challenge in a school. And again, think about how you responded. And there might have been phases to that response. You might have started off in one way and then flipped your thinking and worked through a process. Did you complain? Did you keep silent? Did you propose and then implement a solution? Did you go about becoming more informed about the context? And as always, in a solution-focused approach, it comes down to the impact. What were the outcomes, again, of that action or inaction? And upon reflection, what are your takeaways? What did you learn? So what can you do differently next time? So professional development matters when we reflect on it and make changes. Simply turning up is not enough. Leaving this short session today, I hope that there are 3 key takeaways that stand out, and in your own time, that you reflect upon those points. I would encourage you to write down your answers to the prompts provided, and then ask yourself if your actions match your words and thoughts. And then to go a little bit further and consider how your colleagues would answer these questions about you. Do you dwell on problems and obstacles, or focus on solutions? Why do you want to lead? And why should anyone be led by you? Be authentic and be clear, because that is your foundation for going on to be an effective leader.